Hi everybody, it's Gareth here from PrivateBox. Look, this is video about how we have to perform anti-money laundering audits every couple of years. And I thought I'd just give you a bit of an insight into what that actually means and looks like. Um, so yeah, I'm just going to go over what happens, what the likely outcomes are, and then talk about a little bit of that costs. So, the Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Funding of Terrorism Act, or AMLCFT Act, came out. I think it was written around 2009, but it came into force around 2012, 2013. And Private Box, there's a little bit of when in terms of being caught by the act, most of it is aimed at financial institutions, financial transactions, which kind of makes sense. If you're going to launder money, you're actually going to have to move money. PrivateBox is caught by a little part of the act where we act as a correspondence address on behalf of somebody else. Um, then we're caught by the act. So that's our business. And I was actually arguing with Department of Internal Affairs that it's actually New Zealand Post's business as well, but that all fell on deaf ears. So this is just something that we've had to do for the last 7 years. It's very what's the word? Onerous. It's quite a lot of work, and not that much outcomes really. So in this video, I just wanted to talk about audits. And so in the legislation, it actually says that we need to have an external independent auditor come through and review our anti-money laundering processes every 2 years. What it doesn't say is that there needs to be a successful audit. It doesn't say anything about the qualifications of the auditor. It just has to be someone who's independent and says that they're an auditor, right? So um, up until this year, we were using a company called AML Solutions. I've actually switched it up a little bit because I found a local auditor they're based out of Auckland. I found a local auditor in New Zealand, Total Risk Management, and so that means I could actually use AML Solutions for our consulting for helping us develop our programs. And Total Risk Management does the auditing, right? And it came down to cost, right? They were just half the price of what AML Solutions were paying, and I had to pay for someone to fly down from Auckland. And that's what I've done. So the when Total Risk Management came in, that we what we actually had to do was send them your AML risk assessment or anti-money laundering risk assessment, or actually your money laundering risk assessment, and where you analyze your business to say which functions and which products and which services and the way you deliver your service, which ones cause the most risk for money laundering, and that's your risk assessment. So that's one set of documentation, and then you have a second set, which is your anti-money laundering program, which is how you're going to address those risks in your business to reduce the risk of money laundering. Now, so I sent those documents off to our auditor, and they reviewed them, and then spent some time on site where they would ask me some questions, maybe look at a customer account or two, and give us feedback on what happened, or how we measure up to the legislation. Now, I can tell you that we did fail our last audit quite significantly, and I think it was I missed a legislation update in the last year or two where they've actually changed the wording of things. So the risk is the same. The risk hasn't changed, but I'm just naming things that aren't correct anymore. And so when he's going through his tick box and saying, "Oh, I done the DFNGB, which is a designated non-financial business group risk assessment?" I'm like, no, because that's a new term to me and I don't know, right? So, um, uh, how does it impact our business in terms of the risk management or risk mitigation that we do? It doesn't really, but it means in that checkbox exercise that my auditor went through, we were a fail. So, and so I've gone back to my previous auditors, AML Solutions, who I found they actually really practical and down to earth. A little bit expensive, but uh, uh, what I value is actually that we might get something that's usable out of them, and then to actually help me build documentation that matches what the legislation is actually demanding right now, as opposed to what we wrote in 2012, 2013, or updated every 2 or 3 years to do. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're working with that at the moment with our consultants, and then we want to have everything in place and ready to be audited for our next audit in 2022. And just that's about all I wanted to say. I just wanted to mention the cost this involves. Like the consultation, I think is around about $2.5 grand. The auditing themselves was previously about $5 grand. I've got that down to about 2.5 as well. So you're looking at least $5 grand in terms of the audit and the consulting. And then we use various tools to actually help us verify our risk mitigation, basically, because we don't do financial transactions. Basically comes down to verifying customers' identity, and where that and there's a cost involved with that, right? So we spend a couple of thousand a year on that, and then but what are we getting up to? Maybe 5 to 10 grand. But the thing that actually that costs us the most is the amount of time it takes us in order to produce these documents, um, to work with the auditors, to work with DIA to make sure we're on top of things. We're getting regular updates from the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit of the police, in terms of new risks. So reading all those, trying to translate what those risks might be in terms of mail risk, which is what we do. Um, and to a lesser extent, like the company risk, like we let you have your company kind of exist out of PrivateBox. So that's where there's a little bit of money laundering risk, and we have to keep an eye on what risks are associated with that. For example, a couple of years it was there's a new risk around travel agents, and so the time cost is significant. In terms of like onboarding customers, we probably spend 5 to 20 hours a week just doing onboarding. And then actually on the documentation, you'd be easily spending 1 or 2 hours a week just staying abreast of everything. Um, and over the year, that would be adding up to 30 or 40 grand, I reckon, in terms of paid time that you've had to spend on your AML duties. So um, not for the faint-hearted, and that just gives you a little bit of insight into what it's like being a reporting entity under the anti-money laundering legislation. You can get a list of all reporting entities from Department of Internal Affairs website, and if you want to know if the businesses you're dealing with are actually caught by the legislation. And that's it for me, and see you next time. Thanks.